So many of you have asked me, what's a crisis scenario and what can we do? What did Vikings do if all-out catastrophe occurs? Doesn't matter what scenario or scenarios. What do you do? What has worked earlier in history? Well, let's have a look at that, shall we? It's autumn or fall, as many call it, here in Norway. Beautiful colors in the trees, and what a tight-knit community we have become here on this channel. Thanks for that. For some reason we haven't grown at all since April, since I posted this video that I had to take down. Well, anyway, and especially the clan. Thanks to all you guys who are contributing, helping me, and we become really good, tight-knit community. I appreciate it very much, and I'd like to give something back here on this topic. I mean, there are a lot of scenarios that can go. If the horizon, if you see clouds in the horizon, if you see some disturbing things coming up, if you look at the macro economy of it all, or geopolitically, well, maybe some of you or all of you can have that prepper mind for a moment and try to think, what would I do to survive and to make myself secure, and those closest around me, of course. I got kids, I got family. You want to take care of them, right? Let me just sit down here. It's my hometown, for those of you who don't know. Very small town, far away from cities, but close to the coast. So if something goes on, well, ships will come by, no doubt. And what are these scenarios? Well, if you look back in history, we see a lot of catastrophes, of course, a lot of people dying. What we do know, I'm going to sum up a few things here now for you. Most of the people who die fairly quickly. All right? So it's just a matter of being those 10% or more, hopefully, to survive this initial phase. How long that'll be, you know. If there's a nuclear bomb somewhere, I mean, you gotta take cover. I mean, we learned in school in the 80s and 70s when I was young, if you see the cloud, the mushroom atomic cloud, and you gotta hide under your desk in your school classroom, because you know in a few seconds there will be glass shattering all over, you know, to avoid that first one. Then you got about 7 minutes to find the bomb shelter. We used to call it bomb shelter. Now nobody here knows where the closest bomb shelter is, and it's not even called that. And do they have food there? Do they have weapons? Do they have water, things to survive with? Mm-hmm. Well, if you do manage to take cover from that nuclear bomb, you got to take care of that acid rain. So you got to wait. You got to be able to wait somewhere until the rain falls, right? The first rain. And I'm not going to be much of a prepper, because I do have that prepper thoughts, and I'd like to hear from you, preppers out there. I mean, you've been giving this a lot of thought, no doubt. But there are a lot of other scenarios, and point two, these crisis scenarios, the catastrophes, the great catastrophes, there are normally several that go hand in hand, like we've seen in history. Plagues and climate change have occurred pretty much at the same time. The start of the Bronze Age, the Justinian plague, after the Iron Age, before the Viking Age, and of course the Black Death, and the Little Ice Age that was there. Always this, and the end of the Bronze Age also, we have great things happening. These things are important to know. But, you know, you have warfare, you have Well, for being a Norwegian, living here with a family that I have from the coast here, to have this strong oral tradition of telling tales from centuries back in our family, from the time when we were occupied for centuries on by foreign powers, by foreign dictators, by today's standard, and having to suffer, endure, and survive. There are a few things that we learn, I guess, that are in our genes, that are, I mean, you gotta have some of that guerrilla warfare mindset, I think. So, thirdly, if you live in a city, have a retreat. I would say 70% of all Norwegians have a retreat, either a cabin in the mountains or by the sea, or they got these mobile homes or boats, and we're able to escape fairly quickly out of cities. Oh, that's important. Get out of those cities, man. And do you have a place? Do you have a secure place? And where is that place? You know, you should have a place far away from communication lines, in a sense. That means, I guess, logistically, where ships go up and down along the coast. No, that's a no-no. Not out by the fjords like that, you know, you can be spotted, especially at nighttime. Roads and railroads. Stay away from railroads. Not only stations, but railroads. You know, I was on Crimea in 2007, and I heard tales of the Crimean Tatars, and they said, you know, everything could change like this. They said, you know, we don't have a nation to hide behind as Crimean Tatars. There are about 300,000 people, and they were really cross with me because I was there doing research and said, what do you find out can be used against us, you know, by the Russians? I told them, you know, not Russians here. Oh, things can change really quickly, and well, I guess you all saw what happened and how fast. And I'm not going to talk bad about anyone or anything like that. But things can change, and if they do, you need to have a place to be secure. And if you're close to, not necessarily mountains like we are here, you know, you can just, whenever you sense danger, you can escape into a mountain. But hillsides or forests, you know, and you need to know this area, like, you know, like inside of your pocket, because that's where you'll hunt. That's where you might be hunted, and that's where you'll survive whenever you're threatened. That's why these Germanic tribes, when they were in Scandinavia, they had hill fortresses, right? But even those hill fortresses, they're not, I mean, there are much more than 1,000 here in Scandinavia. Probably more than 2,000 all around, you know, we got all around here. The thing is, they're not good for sheltering for weeks on because there's no water in most of them, you know. And you can't be, if you're surrounded, I mean. And with all this new technology that exists, you know, and you gotta be able to hide and survive, and you gotta have shelters, and you gotta have spare shelters, and then there's that community, you know. Are you all alone? Are you together with your family, your most loved ones? Are you more people? Are you able to connect and find each other when the disaster is out there? That's a peculiar one. I mean, you got no cell phone, of course. You have walkie-talkies. That's something to think about, you know. And I'd like to ask you, who are watching this, and if you have some sound advice, and if you have some ways to talk about these things, discuss them, please do so below. I'd like to hear, and I'll join in on those discussions. Once you become occupied, you gotta learn from earlier in history. You know, you'll always have a burden. Either way, you know, financially, in order to survive. And I mean, look at the Balkans in the Second World War. If you are good at doing this guerrilla warfare, you not only lose 10 of your own for every one of the enemy that you take down, but they can even go up to 100 of your own for every enemy you take down. That's kind of harsh, you know. Tito, he sent polite messages to Stalin. Can you please stop trying to take my life? You know, he had so many attempts at his life. They were never able to get him, you know. And that's why he had his grip for so many years afterwards in Yugoslavia. I mean, you gotta be tight-knit. And that's also what we saw in the Balkans in the 90s. If you've seen that movie with Woody Harrelson, where they play these journalists in Sarajevo, there's some really good portrayals there on how what we do know happens in chaotic times in warfare and stuff like that. We do know that groups of 50, 60, 100, 200, maybe even more, can gather and control one area, aligned with other groups, similar groups close to, and everything turns more geographical. That's, I mean, that's something that strong people will join in on. And you'll control your area, right? And we do know that that can be pretty tough, but we fall back to some things that I think are in our genes, you know, from having lived this way for thousands of years. It's in our genes to live that way, you know. It's even more natural than living in cities and having a bustling working life or big corporate business like so many of us have. You know, it might even be more natural in many senses. So we got definitely some good roots. I think that's probably why we see so many places that things, when everything is chaotic, people tend to resort to these kind of living conditions, aligning themselves with others, and where the strong survive. And there's not much room for the meek, except for under the wings of the strong. And there you go. And I'd like to say another thing also about scales. Because if you do, like I suggested, see these troublesome horizons out there, if you do see, if you're worried, if you're scared, I mean, I heard yesterday, it's even these environment girls in Norway, 20 years old, who wanna, what's it called, do a vasectomy? Is that called that for women? They want to remove their possibility to have children at the age of 18 or 20 because of climate change. Yeah, imagine that. Because they don't feel like they can produce more children into the world, you know, when we are destroying the world or something like that, you know. Well, we're up for much other things than that. And I mean, well, Godspeed. And what I'm thinking is, there's something we need to know about scales. Because when you do see troublesome things, when you do see things geopolitically or in macroeconomics, you see things align a little bit, and you're thinking maybe, you know, when. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. All hell break loose, you know, the shit hits the fan. What's these factors? And maybe we see some things differently now than from 5 or 10 years ago or 20 years ago when Al Gore said, what was it, 2010, the world would go under. He got rich by saying that. Imagine that. Well, it's like when you look at the map, and or when you're out. I remember when I was in the army, I was leader for this group, and we were competing. We call it Hell Week. Go out without food or anything and out sleep, and we were competing against other groups. Pretty much a little bit like the early Comitatus, or the early Germanic tribes, roaming around trying to survive. And and manage. And when you're reading the map and you're moving in areas like this, and if you see things in the wrong scale, I mean, those are lessons to be learned. I learned something from that during that week. And I think about that a lot when I read, like I'm an economist and I'm a historian, and I see things that I've seen earlier in history, right? Many things. And you're thinking, is this happening now? Or am I exaggerating? Am I reading the scales wrong? Am I getting frightened or scared? Acting a little bit like I'm panicking without knowing it, Am I in a rush? Or am I balanced when I try to read the word without carrying the word on my shoulders? Of course, you can't do that either. It's easier when you're not in it, of course. It's easier when you're on top and trying to read what's going on. It's much easier if you have some perspectives to compare with, either in history, in time, or in space, if you're outside of it. And keep that in mind, instead of going all out alarming. It's much better or easier, to align yourselves with other prepper heads who are thinking like you do, but who are not acting too emotionally inclined. I almost added there. And of course, people who have kids, who have family, are thinking differently than other people who don't have those attachments. And though that's different roles. You gotta be able to take care of your closest one around you. You make different priorities, of course. But if you want to be able to survive, you gotta be able to work together. And that's something we know a lot about. As I mentioned in some of my other videos here, to survive this far up north. I mean, have you seen Norway on the map? In the north of Norway, it's not possible to survive that far north if you compare with the southern hemisphere, for example. It's crazy how far north it is. It's only because of the Gulf Stream, of course. But they didn't just survive because they had this fair skin giving them the loss of daylight, causing vitamin D shortage and stuff, made other people not able to survive. But there were other adaptations. But one of the foremost abilities they had, which they nurtured for thousands of years, we call it a Stone Age and the Bronze Age later on, but that was working together, collaborating. And we have it in ourselves, you seriously do. And that's something to think about. Because there'll be leaders, there'll be alphas, there'll be betas pretending to be alphas, there'll be so many concerns to make, and there's no bullshit anymore, This is not Fortnite, where you can lose your life an endless amount of times, You only got one life. Those around you only got one life, and you have to deal with people who are grieving, who are panicking, who are traumatized, and you gotta make decisions, not only for yourself, most likely. Tough decisions. And those scenarios there, I dare to say that some of us elders who remember the Iron Curtain, who remember the last century, we are a little bit better equipped. I read this in the papers now. People say how to make your child more equipped to handle adult life, to handle the future. It's not just a matter of being tough, being more resilient, being more better built, being more sharp, or having some depth, or you gotta work so many different ways. And that's the good part, is we have it in ourselves, a lot of this. And that's what I've been trying to say on this YouTube channel, if you've seen that earliest videos. I mean earliest back in time, like the videos from up north in Norway, from the Stone Age, from Træna, or the secret of the Germanic tribes, you know, how they work together. The abilities they had, it's just amazing. We can learn some from that. You know, if you are asking me what I think, how to prepare, you know, I mean, certainly, let's hope all these scenarios don't play out, of course. And should we prepare? If, let's say, only 10% survive a disaster scenario in some areas, when do you think those 90% will die? You know, it'll happen in a short period of time. I'm pretty certain of that, you know, just to be able to survive that initial weeks, you know, and then come out, and what do you do then? And what comes after, you know? Do you remember in Voluspa, in the Old Norse sagas, when they wrote about after Ragnarok? You see that video made about Ragnarok? Ragnarok actually happened right in the year 536. Plague combined with climate change for about 150 years, starting in 536. Changed everything, man. And what happened afterwards? Well, we saw the rise of the Muslims with their conquests, the Islamic conquest, as it is called, you know. People will always come and take advantage afterwards. There will always be something afterwards. And the Norse gods who survived Ragnarok, they settled on this place called Idavollen, where they had their altars and temples where they played their games, and they started rebuilding society, which is exactly what happened in the early 700s, or 650 to 700s. And that's what the Vikings remember. There will always be a time to rebuild, and we got to prepare for that too. And that's my last point. And I hope you like this. And I hope you'll join in on the discussions below. As I said, I'm fairly happy that we're a tight-knit community. I'm fairly happy that I haven't still passed 13,000 subscribers. And I hope not too many of you are unsubscribed. Some of you I know have been unsubscribed several times, but I hope this will pass as long as I don't remain too controversial, I guess, in someone's eyes. But in any case, it doesn't matter. I mean, we're tight-knit. I'm happy to be with you, and I'm happy to be able to discuss this with you. These are important things, and we're living in important times, because this is it, right? So, in 2 days' time, I'll be off to Sicily. I'll film some from Sicily, because I'll be talking about Normans there. Taking people who are paying to come along to hear the stories about these Vikings and Normans who settled and fought in Sicily 1,000 years ago, and their heritage from there, which actually goes quite far. I'm really looking forward to that. So I'll see you in Sicily in my next video. And take care, and stay prepared. Bye.